a narrative, and we're just going to go with that narrative. You will see variances all over the internet, so just be aware. I don't know which one is right. We just grabbed one and ran with it.
Yeah.
So,
a story, not a lizard.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
you don't know how I do my research.
Yeah. Good point.
Lots of dead little lizards in Devin's apartment.
No, pets. Come on.
Our story starts in the fall of 1987 when George Holloman Jr. was riding his bike near Skateboard Swamp. According to George, he was thirsty, so he stopped at a small creek to get a drink of water.
And oh, by the way, this was around midnight, correct? I say the one that I read about this, it was late at night, like around midnight.
It was in the evening. I have seen variations of George's story, so I'm not going to commit to a time. But George said that he was thirsty, so he stopped for a drink. He might also have wanted to have a cigarette, depending on the version that you read.
And I gotta say, by the way, George, it's a little late, I know, but you shouldn't drink out of the creek because even though it looks clean and clear and refreshing, well, probably somebody lives upstream.
You know, there's a reason I didn't put that in my script because I knew he would go straight for that little public service announcement.
I was going to bring up Cryptosporidium and Giardia, but whatever.
Just saying, dude.
It's important.
So, he stops for a drink, and reportedly, George said he felt like he was being watched, and he looked around, and on the other side of the road, he saw a green-colored stump that didn't look quite right. So
a green-colored stump?
Yeah. So he said that he had decided that he was going to go over and take a look when the stump moved and then stood up. And what he saw was a creature that was over 7 feet tall. It had green skin and horns or spikes, depending on the version, going down the length of its back. And just a few minutes later, a car drove by, causing the creature's eyes to glow red. And at that point, apparently the car was enough to startle the creature that it turned around and walked away from George and into the swamp.
How did it walk?
On 2 feet, on 2 legs.
So like
it walked
a
like a
humanoid.
person, upright like a human would.
So had George brought extra underwear?
I do not know.
Oh.
Because really, that's the end of George. I mean,
George does not
is
actually
the
appear.
earliest.
He does not appear in a lot of the accounts of this.
No,
actually.
he's one of the earliest accounts, or he's the first, if you take this in chronological order, he's the first one. But after that, he does kind of just disappear.
Actually, George was lucky, too. He kind of caught the critter in a good mood.
Based on the next story that we've got, you're absolutely right.
Either that or there's something about cars that sets this guy off.
There may be. There's a song about it that really says that. But we are going to move forward in time again to a story that was told by 17-year-old Christopher Davis. Christopher Davis was driving home from work on the 29th of June, 1988, so we're a year forward.
And this is the most well-known.
Most well-known, most reported on version of the story. It was about 2 in the morning, and he was driving home from work, and he blew a tire near Skateboard Swamp. He stopped and he changed the flat, but as he was putting everything back into the car, back into the trunk of his car, he said he heard a thumping sound behind him. And when he turned around, he saw the lizard man of Skateboard Swamp, which he didn't know that's what it was at the time.
Nobody knew about it at that time.
But
I think George the bicyclist hadn't said anything at this time.
He had not.
Yeah.
But so Christopher sees this thing running towards him, and not surprisingly, he jumps into his car and tries to flee.
After a quick underwear change.
He said that he jumped into his car and he shut the door and he locked the door and the thing went for the handle. At that point, he wanted out of there, so he turned on the car and he hit the gas and he drove away. And he said that it started to chase him, and then eventually it jumped onto his car, onto the roof of his vehicle, and he could see its fingers through the glass over the roof of the car.
So Lizard Boy or Lizard Guy was on top of the car.
Yeah, supposedly he was doing 40 miles an hour when Lizard Man was able to climb upon his car. I'm guessing that Christopher must have been then doing some evasive driving, swerving back and forth, and must have at some point managed to dump the Lizard Man off of the car, because when he got home, he didn't have Lizard Man on his vehicle, but he did tell his parents what had happened. And his car did have some damage. There were scratches on the roof, and the driver's side mirror was banged up. And Chris's dad Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm just thinking how this sounds like a really convenient cover-up for him having mashed his car up a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
We'll deal with this. We'll deal with that. We're not in theories yet.
I figure, yeah.
So Christopher's dad, prompted by later reports of damage to vehicles, makes his son come forward and tell his story. And he doesn't tell his story for 2 weeks. It's a full 2 weeks later before Christopher's story comes out. When he goes to the cops, and you can see footage of him, on local news telling his story, but when he tells the cops what happened, here's what his statement is. He says, and I quote, "I looked back and saw something running across the field towards me. It was about 25 yards away, and I saw red glowing eyes. I ran into the car, and as I locked it, the thing grabbed the door handle. I could see him from the neck down, the 3 big fingers, long black nails, and green rough skin. It was strong and angry. I looked in my mirror and saw a blur of green running. I could see his toes, and then he jumped on the roof of my car. I thought I heard a grunt, and then I could see his fingers through the front windshield, where they curled around on the roof. I sped up and swerved to shake the creature off." End quote. And as one of you observed before we started Christopher's story, his is the most widely reported and the widely known version of the story, or the initial story of the Lizard Man of Skateboard Swamp.
Yeah.
It's partially, as Joe was talking about, we hear about him instead of Holloman because Holloman didn't come forward. It wasn't until this story and several others happened that Holloman came forward. I think that might be why people don't give him as much credit as maybe he's due. I don't know.
Yeah, I can totally understand why he didn't say anything to anybody.
Yeah.
Because, they think you're nuts. And, of course, I can totally understand why people would think, well, Holloman just wants a little attention, and he's sort of piggybacking on everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been that, too.
Exactly. I had said when we were talking about Christopher's dad having him come forward that there were other reports that had prompted him to do so. Well, one of the events that had prompted him to make his son come forward took place on the 14th of July of 1988. There was a couple named Tom and Mary Way, and they lived in Bishopville, South Carolina, which is about 10 plus miles from the swamp.
It actually depends from the center of the swamp.
Yeah, it depends on where that's
towards the northern end of the swamp. It's actually closer,
Yeah, so that's why I rounded it as about 10 plus miles, just give or take.
Yeah, just depending on where in the swamp the critter was.
That morning, they were getting ready to leave the house, and Tom went outside while Mary was busy doing I don't know what in the house. But he came back in, and he told her to come outside and look at their Dodge minivan.
Yeah, the swamp man had keyed their car.
No.
No? He didn't key their car?
No.
Oh, what did he do?
The hood, the front of the hood was all scratched up and parts of it were pulled off. There were holes all along the front edge of the hood, like teeth mark size holes. The wheel well of the driver's side fender had suffered the same fate as the front of the hood. It was tore up and it had holes and scratches all over it. The molding had been torn off as well. The hood ornament was gone and the antenna was bent. And reportedly, though I've never seen anything really concrete on this, reportedly some of the wires from the engine had been pulled out. I've never seen anything where somebody said, yeah, it's right here's those wires, unlike with the footage of the van where they show the parts and pieces that were chewed off. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's hard to say. I mean, it's impossible to do that unless you open the hood, at least partially. So who knows?
Now, on the interviews that they've given, they say that there were tufts of hair and blood and footprints around the van, and that they had those taken in for testing, and casts were supposedly made.
The cops tested them, or these people?
The cops supposedly took them in for testing, but I have never heard anything about them. And the only image that I've ever seen that maybe looked like blood on the hood of the van also looked like it could have been dried paint. So I don't know, but the hood is definitely chewed up, and the wheel well is definitely chewed up. I mean, when they looked at it, somebody's like, well, it's obviously that an animal has been chewing on the molding of your vehicle. What kind of animal? Well, obviously a lizard.
Apparently. What else would do that?
Yeah. They do love metal, it's true.
They do.
Not a house cat.
From that point forward, there's a lot of stories of the Lizard Man during that year or so.
It wasn't even a year. It was like a summer, like a couple of months over a
Well,
summer, right?
No,
there were some more, but it seems like the bulk of them were in a fairly short period in like the summer of '88.
Well, yeah, there was some in the summer, then some in the winter, some in the spring, and then it really kind of started to taper off. It was about a year that there was reports coming in. Now, the damage to vehicles really only happened during the summer because there were people who were parking around Skateboard Swamp and coming back to their car and finding it all scratched up and punctured. But that only really happened during that summer from about July forward. But the Lizard Man continued to be reported. There were footprints found around these vehicles and casts were taken of it. And you always see it reported as, and the feet were 14 inches long, which sounds big in theory until you think about the fact that I wear a size 9 boot, and my size 9 boot, when you slap a ruler next to it, is 12 inches long. So they're not actually that huge of feet. They're big if they're from a critter like that.
Not that much bigger than my feet, really.
But they're not gigantically, insanely huge, is my point.
Could have been your average NBA player.
Could have been.
Yeah.
Could have been.
Could have been anything, yeah. Now, the media went really, really crazy with the Lizard Man. They had a lot of fun with him, and they were reporting on him all over for a while. But as we talked about, things kind of died down. And then 2 years later, a woman named Bertha Blythers said that she and her children were driving near Skateboard Swamp when a huge figure lunged at the car from out of nowhere. And then after that, there were sporadic reports. But, like I said, things had kind of tapered off from what they had been in the summer of '88. People were still reporting seeing the creature. Occasionally cars were being scratched up and blamed on the Lizard Man. And just so we kind of get an idea, the reports are usually the same. They're very, very similar to one another. They always report a creature that is somewhere between 7 to 8 feet tall. They always say that the skin is green, greenish brown, brownish colored, like there's this whole green to brown spectrum that you see it described in.
Well, some people also said it was like kind of furry too.
You do occasionally see that.
And brownish fur.
Always has 3 fingers and 3 toes.
Which I have a big problem with.
But that's a big staple of this story. I think a lot of people might actually be familiar with the Lizard Man of Skateboard Swamp and not realize it, and that is because of a report that was made back in August of 2015. There was a woman who said she saw the Lizard Man of Skateboard Swamp while she was stepping out of the back door of her church, and that she took a picture of it with her cell phone, and that picture was picked up by, I would say, a very, very reputable news source, the Daily Mail.
Our favorite.
Yeah.
Our favorite. And if you look at this image, this thing is buff. This lizard is buff.
He's really rocked out.
Marvel and DC don't draw that kind of definition on their characters. Like, this thing is just bulky and
he looks like the Incredible Hulk with a tail. But,
kinda does.
But even the Mail made fun of him.
Yeah, I mean, everybody did. But there was also a video that came out right after that of somebody who said that they saw a lizard man creature from a distance, moving around in the swamp.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And if you watch that video, it's just a blurry video of somebody way far away. And is it human? Is it a creature? Like, there's no way to tell.
It really is. It looks like it's probably humanoid, but as far as it being a lizard man, you can't even tell how big it is or small or whatever. You really can't.
It's a little suspicious. So
Just a little.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Little bit.
So that, in a nutshell, that's the Lizard Man of Skateboard Swamp. The locals love him. They think he's great. There's songs about him. There's T-shirts and mugs and hats. I actually got to get one of those. But there's not a whole lot other than that stuff back in 2015. There's really not been any really good reputable sightings. The video is always crappy, or you can tell they're really staged videos. I've watched some of them that look like somebody had gotten a hold of a knockoff of the Creature of the Black Lagoon costume and were walking around in the dark. It's on shaky ground.
Swampy, mushy ground.
You could say that.
Yeah.
I think real quick, we should probably watch the video.
Yeah.
Just to see what this guy looks like. So while we're watching that, let's take a quick break and then we'll go to theories.
Okay.
All right. Now it's time for listener mail. We got an email here from Bob, Modesto, California. Dear Team Sideways, I would really like it if you would take at least 60 seconds to talk about your sponsor, Blue Apron. I find them really fascinating. Please say something about them. Well, Bob, that's a good question. And I got to tell you, I have a lot to say about Blue Apron, and all of it's good, of course. Now home cooking is available for all of us, thanks to them, because before you had to go to the store and spend hours, literally hours, shopping around for all these little esoteric things like, butter and milk, things you'd never heard of, in order to put together a nice home-cooked meal. And now they just send that stuff straight to your door, and it's already measured out for you and everything. And you can cook a really good meal really easily, and they're saying like 40 minutes, which, for me would be more like 3 hours, the rate I'm going now. With Blue Apron, you can prepare delicious, really memorable meals for yourself. Let me list some of the meals here that are available this March. We've got 2 more weeks left. There's salmon piccata with orzo and broccoli, pork chops with miso butter and bok choy and marinated apple. So check out this week's menu. Get your first 3 meals, that's 3 meals, free, with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/thinking. And you'll love how good it feels and tastes to become this incredible home chef that you never thought you could be. So don't wait. That's blueapron.com/thinking.
Dude, that was so real. I'm telling you, it was the real deal.
I got to go change my underwear. Excuse me for a moment. Let's take a break.
The subtitle of this episode is Joe, have to change the underwear.
That's right.
Constantly today.
Joe's obsession with underwear.
Yeah.
Are they uncomfortable today, sir? I mean, Are you okay? Do we really need to pause so you can change them?
That's the great thing about these mysteries is they're so scary. It gives me a great excuse to change my underwear, which I rarely do.
Just wish he'd wash them.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Well, let's go into theories. Theory number 1 is that the lizard man of Skateboard Swamp is real.
No.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No.
Nope. According to the internet, a lot of people believe that the lizard man could be real. And
apparently, something like 20% of the population of America also think that the moon landing is fake. So,
and a larger portion believe in Bigfoot. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that people believe in, and
but Bigfoot is real.
Well,
perhaps.
Let's get back to the lizard man.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then we'll talk about Choopy later.
Okay.
So let's explore this a bit. And I know that you are probably going to have to do the same thing as I, which is set aside the disbelief because of the fact that, you would think that something this big couldn't have gone undetected for this long. But let's just set it aside.
Yeah, I mean, they find giant whales that have been living in freshwater seas all the time.
They have found new species out there, although usually they're in the middle of the ocean 2 miles down.
Or in the middle of nowhere where nobody is. I just saw the thing the other day where they found a boa constrictor that they thought had been extinct for 50 or 60 years. And they're like, what? These things are here?
I'm just waiting for them to find the dodo.
Mm-hmm. It's out there.
It's out there.
Yeah.
I believe.
They're going to find the dodo, and then it's immediately going to walk into a fan blade.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, so let's put aside our disbelief and listen to this. It's real theory.
Okay, so
however bunk it may be.
So if you think about it, South Carolina, it's not the most densely populated state in the union. It's the 24th most populated as of the 2013 census. And it's a decently sized state.
So it's half populated.
Yes. Wait, no. And Skateboard Swamp is part of a tributary of the Petey River. And if you look at the whole area, as Joe talked about earlier on the map, it's not like it's a big square swamp. It follows a lot of waterways and courses. And it really ranges over a pretty decent area before eventually dumping out into the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, it's not totally fettered water.
Right.
And actually, it would be a nice little highway if you were the sort of critter that was one of these mysterious Bigfoot-like creatures that wants to avoid detection. It's a nice little highway to transit from point A to point B, because you're not going to have a lot of people wandering around inside the swamp.
Yeah, if you're shy and it's a small population, it just naturally stays small. You could see theoretically how something living in that very specific
microecology or something.
Yeah, that's a very specific environment could theoretically go undetected.
And for the record, we aren't talking like they came up from Florida through the Atlantic Ocean. We're talking just this one specific little area.
Yes, this is not Florida Man Strikes.
Great, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, they're definitely, they wouldn't be a transplant. They would have had to have been there for a while. They would have,
yeah, and also like the problem of them being both freshwater and saltwater would be an issue as well for me.
Well, so as far as I can tell, Lizard Man isn't necessarily like, a swimming lizard as in it's part-time. You'd think it was a crocodile if you saw it in the water until it stood up.
No, it's more man than lizard.
Yes, It is very humanoid.
Not much of a swimmer.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, the accounts vary on the look of its face, like we talked about. Earlier, it's got the red eyes, but the accounts vary from person to person as to what its body shape is. But it's always humanoid. It's just that 3 toes and the 3 fingers are one of the common defining characteristics. Mm-hmm. After that, it's all over the map.
Yeah, it should be noted. I don't know, maybe you mentioned it. Not everybody has seen the tail, which doesn't mean that he doesn't have one, but not every witness reported him having a tail.
It's very true. Not everybody says that. So either it's a rather small, stumpy tail, or it doesn't have one.
Or it could have been the angle. They just saw him from the front and didn't see the tail, maybe. I don't know, but yeah. So,
But there is the weird thing about the difficulty I have with this theory of it being real is there are no reptiles that are known to be or even appear to be humanoid. Mm-hmm. Even the big ones, you think about like gators or the Komodo dragon, like those things they will stand on 2 legs to reach up to grab food, but they're not mobile in that fashion. They don't
walk around that way, no.
Right. They don't get around that way. So it's a little weird that suddenly we've got something that is human proportion in terms of torso and legs and arms, but is a lizard. That's the weird thing, is that we don't see this evolutionarily anywhere else.
No, you see things like the Velociraptor, which was standing on their hind legs, but they're not humanoid shaped, though.
No. Right,
and
they were
got
dinosaurs.
2 legs and 2 arms, and they were dinos.
And maybe it's something like that is some kind of weird holdover, like the turtle. It's still a dinosaur, but...
Well, so one thing that's also interesting is, and I asked this specifically to be able to talk about this, is... They keep saying it's got 3 toes or fingers, right?
3 toes,
and that
3 fingers and a thumb.
That's very rare in the reptile world. Most reptiles have 5 fingers and toes on each hand.
5 digits?
And so, 5 digits. So, even like crocodiles, chameleons have the like weird pinchy 3 things. But lizards have 5. It's really rare to find a reptile that's got 3.
Well, actually, this one had
weird.
4. If you see the picture that was taken in 2015, he's got 3 fingers, but he's also what might be a 4th finger, but looks like actually an opposable thumb.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, my mistake.
Yeah, so
from
4,
that
even 4.
Very legitimate picture.
Exactly. Yeah.
My mistake, but still, even 4 versus 3 versus 5.
Yeah, it is a little strange.
It's weird. It's weird.
But actually, it's not unheard of if you watch The Simpsons. They have 3 fingers.
That's true.
Yeah,
the hard-hitting documentary of The Simpsons.
Yes, exactly.
Futurama also.
Yeah, they have 3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. That just bothers me a lot.
That does. Well, and also I've seen I've seen a photograph of the plaster cast that was taken of the footprint.
Of the foot.
And it's you can see the heel and the ball.
Mm-hmm.
It looks more like it was meant to be a human rather than but we'll just say the most of the foot was okay. But then it's got 4 toes on it.
There are 3.
Are there just 3? I thought there were 4.
It's just 3.
Okay.
It's that white cast, but they look like they're wires with balls on the end were used to create the impression. That's the way it looked like to me.
The toes to me looked like they'd used 2 large rocks to make the heel and the ball, and then basically use like sticks, like because the toes are remarkably cylindrical.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah. Devin's showing me a picture of another set of plaster casts. So there's one that I looked at that were even different from that. And and they were
Yeah, there's see that's and here's the thing. Every cast of, if we're going to get into there's some problems with this being a reel, every one of the casts that you see is different.
Yeah.
Like the feet are always different, and whereas one, it looks like the toes are just slapped on top. The next one, they look like they're dug in, but like they're pitched into the ground. Like it's really, really, really inconsistent, which if this was supposed to be a real critter, they should look somewhat the same.
Now, they could have been a family, some adults, some kids. I mean, and of course, footprints are going to differ depending on if you're, say, walking or tiptoeing or running. I mean, they're going to look a lot different.
I get that, but there's some general issues in terms of there's not even foot shape in some of them.
And to me, the one that I saw that had the toes that looked like they were made from sticks, they were cylindrical. I've never seen toes that looked like that ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this whole thing could just be a product of genetic engineering and manipulation. And maybe that's what it is this is something from the Isle of Dr. Moreau and we just don't get it.
Well, yeah. I mean, is there like a large corporation and, anywhere nearby that, is conducting hideous experiments? And
you should, Joe, I'm ashamed of you. You should know better. There would be no way that we would know that. It'd be some secret organization being billed as, I don't know, a gas provider or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Home security.
Home security. No, it's usually like a gas facility or like a
telephone
power
company.
Plant or a telephone company.
Mm-hmm. Somebody has a reason to draw huge amounts of electricity and fuels. Yeah.
But they've got a huge underground lab. And okay, that's probably what it was.
But I also haven't heard that the lizard man loves Eggos, so I don't think he's probably.
You don't think he is?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good reason.
All right.
Let's move on to our next theory, which is Lizard Man, a total fake.
Yeah.
Could be.
Total fake. So this theory is that, according to the theory, that this thing is totally bupkis, and there's some things about it that make me think that it could be. There's a lot of little towns around this country that have strange creatures that reside near them. And those strange creatures seem to be one of the things that are economically keeping them afloat through the sales of T-shirts, hats, coffee mugs, and any other paraphernalia that happens to have said critter plastered on it.
But also tourism.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. You're selling those things, you're drawing people in.
And you're drawing in just the kind of people you want to draw in, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that this is done intentionally. Like, let's take Christopher, for example, Christopher Davis. I think that he may have believed that he saw something, and then others took it and ran with it and then saw what a friggin' gold mine it was, and that's why then people start adding to the story, and there's copycats. I mean, there was a guy who was caught putting on a rubber lizard man costume in '88. Like, it blatantly spoofing the whole thing.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you? That's what I'd do.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you know the answer to this, but was anybody actually living in the swamp?
I know that there are residences in the area, but I don't know about actually inside of the swamp. I couldn't answer that.
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody could. I mean, that's the part of this country where there are probably some people who have lived there for generations
and are actually living in
and
swamp
are
on houses on stilts.
People.
Yeah. Maybe those people wanted to scare everybody else away and keep them out of the swamp.
Not to
get out of my swamp.
Yeah, and it actually kind of backfired on them, because what happened is it generated all this interest, and next thing you know, there's hundreds of hunters like going through the swamp, like trying to track down and hunt and shoot the swamp man. And so all their privacy they wanted, because they were probably growing pot or something, and all the privacy that they wanted, well, it just went away entirely. And so it's no wonder that the lizard men went away too, because they thought, oh crap, this is totally backfired on us. So
I guess regarding Christopher, though, I maintain that, that's something I would have done when I was 17. If I had been, driving a little too fast on a backcountry road, popped a tire, and run off the road and damaged my car, I'd replace the tire, come up with a really convincing story about an alien mutant dude who chased me.
That's not the kind of story that I would.
I would also not make up a story like that, but I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if it just happened that he did some damage to his car and was trying to cover it up.
Yeah.
Maybe if he was drunk or stoned or something like that and, went home, he could have been like, you know what, this is the best idea ever. My parents will definitely buy this. And at first they were like, no, but then other reports came out.
What is amazing to me is that Lizard Man, if indeed it's a hoax and it is all stems from Christopher's story, it is amazing to me that Lizard Man became Lizard Man based on the drawing that he made. Because the cop said, listen, draw what you saw. And what he drew was a three-toed, three-fingered thing that looks like an alien. Well, I mean, it really does. It's got the bug eyes and the head shape. It totally looks like it's a gray.
It doesn't have the tiny little alien body, though. What it's got is this big
this was
potato.
The bodybuilder version.
No, it's actually not. His one is kind of potato-shaped with a tiny little head and real spindly arms and legs. Very spindly long arms and stuff. Yeah, not athletic looking at all.
I have this great image, this great little scene running through my head where they're like, all right, son, draw what you saw. And he draws it, and they're like, no. He's like, yeah, it looks like an alien. And they're like, nah, son, you're crazy. It could have been a lizard, but not an alien.
What color was it? Green?
It was scaly? Yeah, it was a lizard.
Okay.
And that's just where the story came from. I'm sorry. I'm kind of making fun of this whole thing. But.
I understand that. But this, if we're in the hoax part, there's another problem with the whole story of the Lizard Man, and that is that Christopher and subsequent people since then have said that the eyes glowed red when lights hit them.
Not surprising then.
Well, it is surprising because most creatures that have eyes that reflect light, like cats and dogs and stuff like that, it's usually a yellow or greenish. Maybe kind of a greenish or an amber. But red is not the glowing red eyes. Red is not a color that normally reflects.
Literally just almost hit a skunk last night and its eyes were red as it looked at me terrified.
Are you being serious?
Yeah, I'm being serious.
Did it spray you?
No, I was driving my car.
In town?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's skunks that live in my neighborhood. But, possums as well. They have little red eyes.
But they're not red. They may be amber orangish, but they're not red. And this story makes it out to be that they were, it always says glowing red eyes.
Okay, but in fairness, if somebody were like, what color eyes were that skunk's? I would say they were glowing red. I wouldn't be like, I don't know, they were a subtle shade of amber. I'd say they were red.
Yeah, probably.
Right? That's what I would say. I'm sorry.
That does make sense.
But I wouldn't, and I know what a subtle shade of amber looks like, but, if you're scared, you say, they were red.
But, the thing is, Christopher also says he saw this thing in his taillights as he was driving away.
Well, and
which would make me think that it's the lights on the back of his car.
Yeah, that too.
Coloring it. The same thing with George. He said that, car drove by and the eyes turned red.
Taillights.
Could have been the taillights again. So, the idea that the red eyes, that's
so
what...
really, we're actually wrong about the color of this thing too, right? Because it's only been seen in red light. So what color do you think he actually is if you see a greenish brown in red light? Color theory.
Well, okay. Let me just pull out my handy dandy color wheel.
You don't have one?
Not on my back pocket. No, not today.
Sorry. Okay, so I think there's some other actually better theories than it's a hoax.
There are some other theories here. Believe it or not, I'm actually managed to squeeze 4 theories out of this story.
Yeah, this next one is my favorite one.
So the next theory is that Lizard Man isn't a lizard. Lizard Man is another animal entirely. And I spent a bit of time thinking about what George and Christopher had said they had seen, if indeed their stories are real. And the only thing that I could come up with, besides, as we talked about a little bit before, of drugs or alcohol, is a bear.
Yeah.
And they do have them in South Carolina.
They do, and I think everybody knows that bears can and will walk on their hind legs.
Especially if they're suffering from, like, mange or something that's affecting
Well, the
parts
hind
of their
legs
paws.
thing is, it depends on the animal. But you remember Petals?
Mm-hmm.
There was that bear, and I think it was in California, was Petals? Or I can't remember where Petals was at, but he was a bear whose front legs had been damaged in some way, and the only way he could get around was to walk on his hind legs, and he walked everywhere like he was known in the area.
Well, and there was that
totally getting around that way.
And there was that bear recently. It was like a really sick sun bear, and I think they were like, "It's a chupacabra."
Yes,
right.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And its skin looked kind of scaly because it was just like dry.
Uh-huh.
And if there were a bear that had contracted something that was damaging its skin, paws included, it would be walking around on hind legs and look kind of scaly, but also have some fur.
And look kind of creepy and weird.
And probably attack things that are big in its territory.
And if anybody hasn't done this, so the bulk of this theory is that it is indeed a sick bear with mange. And if you have not seen a picture of a bear with mange before, it is nightmare-inducing. And I want everybody to pause the podcast, unless you're driving, at which point get to your destination before you do this.
No. Just slam on your brakes.
Just stop right where you are.
Right.
Everybody does it to me. Why shouldn't you do that to them? Yeah.
But Google image search bear with mange, and they are freakish looking, and it is really scary. And I could see how something looking like that could scare the holy hell out of somebody.
Sure.
And in the dark, especially, if it's not rabid isn't the right word, but if it's angry and it's upset and it's cranky and it comes after you, like, I could see how that would scare the living daylights out of you, and you wouldn't know what you were looking at.
Oh, sure. And the black bears they have there actually they don't usually, but they can get quite large.
Yeah.
It's not unheard of at all. I mean,
and if you think about these things, if there's one of these living in the swamp, well, I mean, if it's a bear in the swamp in general, we can look at this two ways. Is if it's not sick, but it's swimming around in brackish water, ucky water that's full of organic material, that could stain it, or its fur, or it could just have that on it when it stands up to make it look greenish. And, animals can get stained by their environment. Did you guys see the Cheeto-colored alligator the other day that I put up on our
Yeah, I saw that.
Facebook?
Yeah.
Like, that
That's
stuff
weird.
happens.
Uh-huh. Or, sorry, just to toss out there, albino animals do happen.
Mm-hmm.
So if it were a white animal, that
Might be more prone to staining.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking dirty and weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, so this does happen. And then, like I said, if it's then actually got mange and it's in that environment and those things are affecting the color of it, that would make its skin look that weird greenish, brownish mottled color.
They do not look like bears when they don't have fur. They just don't.
No, they're kind of creepy.
They look like some weird nightmare animal.
The only one that I saw that looked like a bear was an actual cub, like little itty bitty cute cub,
I
and
saw
it just
that
looked
one
like a baby
too,
cub. But
except for also like after you look at it for a second.
It took a minute.
Yeah, you
I
look
thought
at
it
it
was
and
a
you're like,
pug.
and then you're like, oh yeah, no, that's a bear. I see it now. I mean, they really don't. They can really be really scary.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. So bear, sure. I'm liking bear.
And if you think about the damage that was done to parked cars, if you look at the images of that Dodge van that was chewed up, and then you look at some of the other stuff that was done, like the only thing in that area besides somebody having what's a Great Dane or something that really had a chewing problem. A bear is the only thing that I can think of that could punch through the hood of the front of the hood of a vehicle and tear the molding off and chew up the metal. Like, it's the only thing I can really think of that would be able to do that kind of damage.
Dog. And I'd never seen any dog, big or small, attack a car before and try to chew on it.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
Devin is showing us a picture of a car fender that is being chewed apart by a rather large dog.
I would say it's like a feral dog.
Yeah,
maybe coyote sort of.
But again, that's a fairly decent sized dog.
I love it. He's totally trashing the car. He's going for their windshield wipers too. I love it.
But to go for the minivan, to get the hood like it did, and to chew all that off, that's a taller animal. It's a weird angle for a dog to be up at. So yes, it could be a dog.
No, I don't think so. I've seen the kind of damage that bears can do to things, and they are strong, and they
have huge sharp claws.
Huge sharp claws.
Mm-hmm.
Although, again, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's healthy behavior from a healthy, stable animal.
Oh no!
But again, if we're talking an animal that's suffering, especially if
they do weird things to try to relieve the
they do, or they get confused. But
or they're hungry because they're sick and they can't really go out and do their feed themselves normally.
Yeah, right? I mean, or a minivan. Like, was there food in the minivan? Was he trying to? I've seen
pictures. The engine compartment, or the front engine area of the van.
Was there an animal that crawled in there and the bear was trying to get at it? I mean, I've seen there are pictures out there.
That's a good point, because these people, if you watch the interview of the lady, she talks about the what was her name?
Wei, I think. The Wei's.
Wei was her last name. Yeah, but one of the things that she talks about is Mary. That's what it is. Yeah. Mary says that she looked out the window and they had 7 cats who all lived on their front porch, and all their blankets and pillows were spread everywhere, and there were no more cats. Mm-hmm. All the cats were gone. So that's a good point, Devin, is it may have been going after a cat that had crawled up into the engine compartment to hide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or it could also be that they converted it to run on vegetable oil, and they were getting their oil from McDonald's.
Not in the 80s, man.
The whole car smelled like French fries.
Not in the 80s.
What bear doesn't like French fries?
That's a modern hippie thing, not an old hippie thing.
Yeah, I mean, overall, there are a lot of reasons that this could have happened, and I like this theory a lot. Yeah. Especially with this time frame too.
Like in a 6-month year.
I mean, for me, what that sounds like is there was a yearling bear who was out trying to make its own little patch of territory. Thank you. And he was sick, and so he was there, and then he died probably because he was so sick, and so they petered off. But that seems like about the time of year where those bears have to go off and fend for themselves. So. Maybe. That would explain why it wasn't happening really before and didn't happen after.
I mean, or it could have just been a bear looking for territory that happened to come through the area and was sick for whatever reason. I mean, there's a million ways it could happen.
Even animals can go insane, too. It's not just people that go nuts.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever seen the poor polar bears at the zoo sometimes?
They're not happy.
No.
Except for the ones at the Oregon Zoo.
Those are the ones I'm talking about. Okie doke. Well, we've done enough talking about bears. We've talked about lizards. Now let's talk about reptilians. Because that's our next theory.
Like the reptilian.
The reptilians.
Yeah.
Okay, because now it's time to go to Crazy Town, boys and girls. Does anybody remember back during the election, before Ted Cruz was believed to be the Zodiac Killer, he was believed to be a lizard man?
Yeah.
Okay, well, for those of you who don't worry about it. You're better off not knowing.
I just want to read you guys a quote that's pertinent to this.
Oh, okay.
Quote, as 12 million Americans know, the U.S. government is run by lizard people, or to be scientifically accurate, reptilians.
Yep.
Who said that?
I don't know, some people in the Atlantic.
Oh, okay.
Because it's pertinent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, 12 million people know this.
Uh-huh.
It's got to be real.
Yeah, it's totally a well-guarded secret.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So, as Devin has just let us know, there are people in this world who believe that our government is run by a super-secret race of reptilians.
All governments.
Yeah, the entire world is run
our governments, our human governments, our entire global economy and governments. It's all all run by this super secret race of these reptilian creatures that live in underground bases all over the world. And by the way, they're able to change their shape at will. So they are shapeshifters.
Yeah.
They happen to be about 7 or 8 foot tall, which is rather convenient. And they've managed to infiltrate all of the highest levels of government and industry.
Yeah.
And that they're in control.
Yeah, actually, the documentary TV show from the BBC, Doctor Who, did an episode on this.
Oh, did they?
Yeah,
I never saw
but
that
unfortunately, they that species that they exposed can't shift. They have to fit into spacesuits, basically, that are just human shaped.
Is that the ones that have the weird sucker arms?
No.
Okay. Well, let's go back to reality here.
Oh, back to
we need to talk about the real reptilians.
Well, the thing about it is, the reptilians too, they're not necessarily shapeshifters like, say, werewolves and things like that. If you're possessed of that kind of alien technology, you can have a holographic projector that can actually alter your appearance radically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And make you look like a human being.
However they're going about it, they are changing their appearance from a 7 to 8 foot tall reptile creature
into Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz.
Yeah. No, it was Obama.
And
Obama.
And Margaret Thatcher and the Queen of England. And
that's why she's living so long.
Yeah, that's how she's lived so long. Okay. So it turns out that the idea of reptilian humanoids, it's not that old of an idea in all intents and purposes.
It started about with UFOs, right?
It came about with UFOs. Before that, like, reptiles were not part of any kind of really robust lore. There wasn't a real good lore around them.
Yeah, it's crazy how conspiracy theories seem to have only come around after we got really comfortable in life.
Yeah.
And also after we got mass media.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yep.
Yeah.
So it happened around the 40s, the UFO craze, and the reptilians didn't really get a tribute, or reptilian creatures, humanoid creatures, didn't really get the level of power associated with them that we see today, until the late 90s, when a guy by the name of David Icke published a book called The Robots' Rebellion.
Yeah.
Now, for people who don't know, David Icke, he in the 70s was a writer, and then through the 80s, he was on the BBC on a couple of different programs. And then at some point in the 80s, it was right around the late 80s or early 90s.
He had an awakening.
I was going to say he took a turn around the bend, but you were probably putting it much nicer than I am. Mm-hmm. He went on to another show, at which point he told everybody that he was actually the son of God and that the world would end that year.
Yeah, no, he either went around the bend or he just decided there was more money in that kind of stuff.
And as of today, the world has not yet ended, so I'm not sure exactly what happened there.
Well, he's obviously a reasonableist.
Yeah, he's not the first person to predict the end of the world.
No, he's not. He's not. But so apparently what Icke does is in the late 80s and early 90s, he starts talking and then writing about a lot of different things, like automatic writing and messages that he's getting, like psychic experiences that he's having.
Are you skeptical about that stuff?
I've said on more than one occasion that I'm skeptical about that stuff.
I got to tell you about automatic writing. Now, there's times I sat down, like to say, even write a script for this episode. And I'll a little later look down at the page what I've written, and it's just a bunch of tasteless crap. And and so I know it happens.
So to clarify, what is automatic writing?
Automatic writing is where you put down the pen and you don't try to write anything. It's at least the way I understand automatic writing. And then your hand, as if possessed by another being, begins to write things where it says, red rum, kill your wife. You will get the insurance. Nobody will figure it out. Yeah, mail her this letter now. It's awesome.
Okay, so I can tell you that mine always looks like gibberish.
Yeah.
because it's not actual words.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's words, just not in your language.
So
that's true.
You're channeling another being here, dude.
Ike starts doing this, and he starts having these experiences.
Wait, is he writing books in automatic writing? Because if so, I have a lucrative new business opportunity for us.
So what puts him on the map is he's doing this stuff, and then he begins to believe that there is a large alien force controlling our world governments. And he begins to come up with his theories about the reptilians and their shape-shifting abilities. And he starts writing books about it. Over time, it's kind of like a footnote in the early 90s in his books, and then it becomes more and more and more
he
more
starts
a
to
part
develop
of it.
Yeah.
Yes. By the way, as a side note, have either of you looked at, this is the funniest thing, I love Wikipedia sometimes for the drawings that are on there. Have you looked at the reptilian drawings on Wikipedia?
Reptilians for the reptilians that control the human race.
So don't worry about don't Google this, Devin.
I'm doing it.
I'm going to describe this. There is a reptilian creature that is a nice outline and got some gills, and then there's a human man standing next to it in the same line drawing style. And what I want to know is why they decided that they had to include genitals on the human man,
but not on the reptile.
There's nothing like that on the reptilian.
Well, reptiles don't have external genitalia.
So why in the hell?
Because humans do.
Well, I didn't need to see the guy's junk, I'm with you.
It's the weirdest thing to include. But
I have a lot of questions about this
there's
drawing.
a lot of questions about that. But I'll be honest. Listen, Ike he says some things. He makes some claims. He does a lot of things. And I don't even begin to understand. I mean, I've watched videos and read a little bit of his stuff, and I'm not tracking with it. So to give him his due and to try and give a third-party explanation of what David Icke thinks, I found something that is it's a modified synopsis of his belief, and so I'm going to just read that.
Is this from Wikipedia, or where is it from?
This is from some other news article stuff. It's a conglomeration of stuff.
Okay.
So this says, quote, Icke argues that humanity has been genetically manipulated by the Babylonian Brotherhood, a hybrid race of human extraterrestrial reptilians, also known as the Illuminati.
Oh, those guys.
He briefly introduced the extraterrestrial hypothesis in his book, The Robots' Rebellion, and expanded it in And the Truth Shall Set You Free, citing some other books. And then in The Biggest Secret, which he published in 1999, Icke identified the Brotherhood as descendants of reptilians from the constellation Draco, who live in caverns inside the Earth. They are the deities known as the, I'm gonna butcher this, Anunnaki in the Babylonian creation myth.
That's accurate pronunciation, actually.
So,
why do they live in caverns? Do they like it down there, or are they hiding?
I'm guessing it has to do something with the fact that they're reptiles. I have no idea why they live in caves.
Yeah, so the theory of directed evolution is not one that is unpopular. There are a lot of people in this world who believe in directed evolution. But this idea of commingling evolution and that the ruling race is reptilian is, as our fans like to hear me say, the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
It's a little guano crazy.
It's super guano crazy.
Well, you gotta, I'm looking for rhyme or reason here in their big genetic modification plan, because are they trying to make us smarter, or are they trying to make us dumber?
Dumber.
Oh, is that?
We're being
easier to rule.
That might they might be.
We are sheeple.
Yeah.
We are sheeple, my friend.
That must be it. Yeah.
That is the reason that they are doing what they are doing to us. Now, what they are harvesting from us, or getting from this venture of, cultivating the human race, I don't know. I haven't gone that far into Ike's stuff.
Actually,
it's probably a food source. I know.
No, not even necessarily that. It might be that they don't want to exterminate us because they would feel kind of bad about it, but at the same time they want to sort of negate us as a threat to them. A dumb humanity is a humanity that's unlikely to reach the stars and colonize the galaxy and be a threat to their galactic empire.
Maybe.
And so it actually makes a lot of sense. They're being sort of humanitarian, but at the same time, they're keeping us in our place and on our planet.
I can shed a little light onto the directed evolution theory.
Okay, yeah, have at it, please.
Oftentimes people, the theory goes is that it's a alien race that is otherwise extinct in this world. So they came here to try to cultivate a new kind of their species, and it kind of failed, but they ended up commingling or directing us in a certain way, but that those aliens are otherwise extinct in the universe.
Everywhere else except on Earth.
Mm-hmm. And actually,
the Watchers.
Yeah.
So the reptilians, who are basically our Watchers or our shepherds.
Yeah, but that like some sort of intergalactic war or something like that, it made all of the others extinct.
Okay, but
I don't understand.
One of many.
They're extinct here on Earth too, though, right? Because they've crossbred with humanity.
Well, yeah.
Okay,
but they're still better than us.
They're still bigger and smarter and faster and all that stuff. Sure.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Okay.
And that, I mean, those theories usually come that they the first interaction with alien was like Homo sapien, not the first little inkling of a little thing of life. It was
the first thing in the primordial ooze.
Yeah, I mean, it's how a lot of people make the leap from like, how did we stop being animals and start being humans, right? How did we get our intellectual cognition? Yeah,
cognition work.
Anyway, so that's kind of where people land a lot.
So
all you got to do is
to bring us back to our actual story of the day.
Oh, Ike?
Yeah.
Yes.
Talk about Ike?
Well, no, the lizard man of Scapor Swamp. The reason that I looked at Ike and his reptilian stuff is let's again suspend all the disbelief that we've already thrown out there, and let's say, okay, David Icke is right. Well, then maybe this is a situation where there was one of the members of that species, let's say a teenager. You know, the teenagers are always not playing ball.
He was on Rumspringa.
Something like that. And it is, you know what? I hate those stupid humans, and I am going to screw with some stupid humans, and chases a human in their actual form. Or maybe this is their way of playing a huge practical joke on the human race, and it explains Bigfoot and the lizard man of Scapor Swamp and the chupacabra and all these and the Mothman and all these other cryptids are, okay, listen, you have a free pass for a month. Take a form, pick it, screw with them, and then you're done. You can't do it anymore.
Alternately, they're the insane ones.
Who don't get caught right away, and then they're put down by their own species. Yeah,
they're put down or locked up. Yeah,
they're hauled back and put into their their scaly padded rooms.
Well, if you think about it, it could be a form of inoculation too, because accidents happen. Your little projector fails, and suddenly revealing your true lizard form. Accidents happen, and so if you go out there and you create all these hoaxes like Bigfoot, lizard man, whatever. You create all this stuff, this hoo-ha, and so if somebody actually sees you in your true lizard form, nobody's going to believe you.
Unless it happens on the floor of Congress.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you've got a really big problem.
Yeah, but otherwise, I think those guys, they probably really, really carefully check their little projectors.
Well, that's why they have presidential aides.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe that's it. But the point is that either this is, was somebody, one of these creatures in the Ike universe having fun at our expense, or breaking the rules and eventually getting caught and locked away, which is why the sightings of the lizard man of Scapor Swamp doing what the lizard man of Scapor Swamp did in the beginning haven't happened anymore. So, I mean, I don't know. But that's the way this theory is running.
Yeah.
Anything to add to it?
It was a bear.
It was a sick yogi.
It was a sick yogi, yeah.
Not the same instance, I mean, the same thing happened every time. In one case, it was probably a bear, maybe two, and then the rest of it was people made it up, or they imagined it, or they were high.
Well, and like I said before, I mean, if you watch some of those videos, it is very, very clearly a dude walking through the woods, and somebody else has a flashlight shined on them as they're moving through the woods. Like it is so blatantly clear.
Yeah, well, it's not that clear actually. They're so tiny in the distance. Like the guy, the hunter.
Well, no, the one in the dark with the flashlight that I'm talking about, that was very clearly somebody in a suit.
Oh yeah, but like the one that was taken by the hunter, where he's off in the distance, it's like maybe he was using an older, crappier cell phone. He must have been, I guess. But
or somebody compressed that video to optimize it.
It was like 2015 when he took the video, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so why didn't he like zoom in?
Well, maybe that's why it was so bad.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe.
Have you ever taken a picture when you zoomed in on your cell phone? They're terrible.
The quality definitely degrades, but I mean, still.
Especially if it's in the dark.
Which this one was not. This was a daytime video.
Oh, that's right.
The one Joe's talking about is the daytime, but the one I'm talking about is the nighttime.
Yeah, but he was not zoomed in. I mean,
no.
Yeah, not at all. And
I think
didn't he?
The whole thing is silly. So that's really, that's where the scales end. So I think what we need to do now is take care of a little bit of end of show business here.
Yeah.
If you want to read some of the links that we have for research on this story, you can go to our website, which is thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. On there, we will have, like I said, the research for this story, and you can stream this or download from our website. You can do that with all of the stories on the website. We also